Science communication. One of the areas that I hold so dear to my heart, and yet it's filled with oversimplification. So, actually, on the main channel, I discussed this particular person, the glucose goddess. Her real name is Jessie. And on the main channel, I had covered one of the claims that she had made, and she actually did a pretty good job describing what the study talked about in relation to, well, what it was talking about. I'm not going to rehash that right now. But then I ran across this clip and I thought, well, why not just discuss this as well? So it's pretty short. It's only a minute long, so we'll be able to get through it pretty easily. But let's hear what Jessie has to say, and then I'm going to chime in with my few words of, well, I guess you could call it wisdom, considering I have been working with mitochondria for the last 10 years of my research career. So let's go ahead and hear what Jessie has to say.
So your mitochondria are these little tiny factories that live inside of your cells. You have trillions of them in your body. And the job of your mitochondria is, very simply put, to turn your food into energy.
Okay, this is a gross oversimplification. I get that everybody says the powerhouse of the cell. That's what everybody learns, right? In middle school, high school, and then you just get that ingrained in your mind of this is what mitochondria do. And I'm not here to dispel, it's not some conspiracy. I'm not here to tell you, well, you've been lied to, and you're going to see that as the title of the video or anything like that. Mitochondria power the house, you've been lied to. That's not the case. But mitochondria do so much more than just produce energy for the cell. And it's often, I really understand that some people are going to be oversimplifying or simplifying things. I'll say it that way. Simplifying things to get a point across, to not overburden the viewer. But on the other hand, it might be nice to every once in a while offer some sort of additional, some homage to the fact that mitochondria do many other things. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do that right now, actually? So if we look at the sheer complexity of what's happening with mitochondria, you have things like radical scavenging. So your mitochondria produce reactive oxygen species. They produce free radicals, which can be, if they're overabundant, can cause damage. But if you have a small amount of it, it's actually a healthy part of your system, and it actually allows your cells to communicate within themselves. Some other things that it does is it controls calcium homeostasis. So it usually has close linkages with another organelle called the endoplasmic reticulum. On top of that, of course, it's got energy generation. We're going to dive more into that in a little bit. It also has a role in cell death. So there are these proteins called the BCL proteins that, so mitochondria can signal for the cell to essentially kill itself, and that's usually when the cell is starting to become kind of quasi-cancerous. So the mitochondria will send this signal that ultimately kills the cell. So very important in that regard. And it also controls the membrane potential of the mitochondria. So the inside of your mitochondria are much more negative than the inside of your cells, so they have to maintain that potential. The point is that there's a lot of complexity when it comes to mitochondria. If you look at different disease states, all these different genetic markers, and there's more than just these as well. And even these diagrams pale in comparison to the sheer complexity of what happens in mitochondria. But you know what? We'll let Jessie have the floor. And maybe we'll get some other nuggets of information.
Specifically, your mitochondria turn the glucose from your food into energy.
Okay, real quick on this too. While that is true. It's actually over here, pyruvate. So pyruvate does turn into energy, turns into acetyl-CoA, then goes through TCA cycle, then ends up gets turned into FADH, NADH, and then goes through the oxphos system and generates, reactive oxygen species, yes, but also ATP, which is what we're talking about here, cell energy. So that's all fine, but let's not reduce it to just saying that mitochondria just use glucose to generate energy. The predominant fuel source for mitochondria is actually fatty acids, and then a little bit from amino acids, certain amino acids, but for the most part it's fatty acids. Then you could consider glucose, which goes through a glycolysis process, gets converted to pyruvate, and then enters the mitochondria and goes through the same process that I just outlined. So just wanted to clarify.
So if they work well, everything goes great.
Okay, again, now I have to take things out of the mitochondrion, and keep in mind, I did research in this for 10 years. So you would think that I'm completely biased towards saying that everything is mitochondria related, which a lot of researchers do. They focus in on their area of research and they say, aha, everything is related to the thing that I'm studying, which just is so convenient. But also it happens on social media. People talk way too much then about mitochondria or a particular thing, and then they say, well, this is the cause of every disease or every single problem. Okay, so let's pull out of the mitochondria. There are many reasons why you might be feeling lethargic. It could be as simple as you just didn't get enough sleep, or you didn't get quality sleep. Even if you got a full 8 hours of sleep, you didn't get quality sleep. Or maybe you didn't have enough coffee in the morning, enough caffeine in the morning. Or maybe you just haven't, you just started fasting. Or maybe you have been under consuming your food consumption for the last 3-4 days, and therefore you're going to start feeling lethargic. We shouldn't just like whittle it down to, if your mitochondria are running properly, then everything, you're probably going to be feeling great energy. Your mitochondria, especially and a great example of this is like really fit people, they have great functioning mitochondria, but they still have days where they feel like crap. And that's because there are other reasons other than mitochondria that cause issues. But let's just continue.
You get up in the morning, you're full of energy, you're excited, you have your big to-do list, you're excited to finish it. But if your mitochondria are not working well, you're exhausted.
It's not that simple.
And picking up your kids from school is way too tiring. Going grocery shopping, no thank you. At 2 p.m., you already are wondering, when the heck are you going to be able to go lay in bed and fall asleep? So that is usually because your little mitochondria are not working, and most of us.
Okay. Again, that's not true. And I'll give you another example here. Is like, if you've been losing body fat, let's say you're just doing simple like weight loss, right? And you've been losing body fat losing weight, whatever, for the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. There's a point where your body actually down regulates the energy expenditure from your movement, like what I'm doing right here with my hands. I'm moving back and forth. A lot of this is not conscious. I'm not thinking I need to move my hands more. And that's called spontaneous non-spontaneous, or I should say, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. It is spontaneous activity. I'm going back to my first definition. It's spontaneous activity, where it's just without thinking, it happens. Another definition is NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that decreases, but what's funny is that as you're losing body fat, typically people's mitochondria become healthier. So there's an inverse relationship. You feel more lethargic, and you start to actually feel more lethargic, but your mitochondrial health tends to improve because you're losing body fat. Your inflammation decreases. There's a whole host of different things that end up changing. So this is exactly an antithesis to what Jesse's talking about here.
Are in this situation where they're trying the best that they can, but unfortunately, because of the way we're eating, our mitochondria are not working
properly is the last word. Okay. Again, it's just like completely not the case. Could it be the case? Absolutely. But more often than not, that's not actually the reason why. Could it be a contributing factor? Absolutely. Could it be even the main factor in certain situations? Absolutely. And if I go back to this diagram here, right, there are different disease states that are related to dysfunctional mitochondria. And in those situations, yes, absolutely, you're going to have cause and effect relationship between dysfunctional mitochondria and problems. But that doesn't mean that every person, just because they're feeling lethargic, just because they're having some sort of problem throughout the day, feeling less energy, that it's simply because their mitochondria are dysfunctional. Anyway, those are my thoughts. See you next time.